Hi, I'm Danny McKeithen, a partner in the tax group here at Eversheds, Sutherland, and with me today is Rebecca Stork. We're here to talk to you about opportunity zones. These tax provisions were added to the code by last year's tax reform legislation, and they're intended to incentivize and drive new investments into geographic areas called opportunity zones. These areas are economically challenged areas that have been designated by the governors of all 50 states and encompass a significant portion of the country's geography.
Likewise, virtually all taxpayers are eligible for electing into the Opportunity Zone program. The Opportunity Zone program allows taxpayers to potentially defer the tax on capital gains and reduce that tax later on, so long as they reinvest that capital gain within 180 days in a qualified opportunity zone fund.
Let's take a quick look at the tax incentives that are underlying this program. As Rebecca mentioned, this tax deferral is the main one up front. A taxpayer can recognize a capital gain today and defer inclusion of that gain into income by reinvesting cash equal to the amount of that gain into an opportunity fund. The deferral lasts until the earlier of the taxpayer's disposition of its interest in the fund or the end of 2026.
And if that taxpayer decides to hold that interest for a significant period of time, 5 years, they can actually reduce the gain that gets included because they're going to get a 10% step up in basis based on the reinvested gain. If they hold it for 7 years, they're going to receive an additional 5% step up in basis, resulting in a potential reduction of the gain inclusion of 15%.
So that's both tax deferral and tax reduction. There's a third benefit available, and that's the potential to eliminate tax on the post-acquisition appreciation in the value of the fund. That benefit is available if the taxpayer holds its interest in the Opportunity Fund for at least 10 years.
The building blocks of the Opportunity Zone program really focused on the Qualified Opportunity Zone Fund. And the fund must hold 90% of its assets in Opportunity Zone property, either indirectly through an OZ business, such as a partnership or a corporation, or directly through OZ tangible property. The main focus of the Opportunity Zone Fund is really on driving active investments in these opportunity zones. It's not about accumulating financial assets, it's really about an active new acquisition of property.
That's true, Rebecca. On the other hand, as a practical matter, the fund is initially taking in cash, and it then needs a period of time in which to deploy that cash in the acquisition of these operating businesses. The proposed regulations provide a very reasonable 31-month safe harbor, provided there are written plans maintained by the taxpayer for this investment. Let's talk just a bit about some of the other issues both addressed and left unaddressed by the proposed regulations. As we noted, the gains that are eligible for the tax deferral benefit are limited to amounts that are treated as capital gains. Unanswered by the proposed regulations are certain types of gains that may be treated as capital or may be treated otherwise, depending on other facts and circumstances peculiar to particular taxpayers. A much more generous approach was taken with partnerships and S corporations and their owners. Essentially, the entity can elect the tax deferral, or it can choose not to. If it doesn't, the partners and the S corporation shareholders individually are given that opportunity.
And the proposed regs answered quite a few questions, and they also told us that they would be issuing an additional set of regulations to answer some new questions, such as what happens if the fund fails to meet that 90% test? How are the penalties treated? Is there some reasonable amount of time to come back into compliance? So we await those additional sets of regulations related to the Opportunity Zone.
Thank you for joining us. For more information on Opportunity Zones and other bottom line videos, please access eversheds-sutherland.com.